Hi, everybody. Who knows what the statute of limitations is for computer crime in the UK? Yeah.
There isn't one.
There is not a statute of limitations on computer crime in the UK. There is in the US, but there's not in the UK. So I will not be admitting to any crimes today. Though, should you look into it? And I think if you look into any cybersecurity professional's background, you dig deep enough, and there's always some, computer crimes that are swept under the rug a little bit, particularly the older you are, where, there wasn't a degree in hacking when I first started, and I'm not even that old. There definitely wasn't degrees in computer science when a lot of folks in this room got started. And there really isn't a good path into cybersecurity, not like there is today. So a lot of us got our start with computer game hacking, specifically. Put your hand up if you have committed a computer crime, on a video game, or with a video game. Put your hand up if you didn't commit a crime, but you may have broken a EULA or two. Yeah, so hopefully this will be a really nostalgic talk for you about history. I'm going to tell 3 stories today of 3 games that were very influential to me growing up. But I think anybody who's kind of got their start, especially the older you are, probably has a story like this to tell. And I'd really encourage at the very end, when I ask for questions, assuming we have enough time, I'd really love to listen to your guys' stories where it's not technically a crime, and it's certainly not a crime you're admitting to, because there's no statute of limitations on that. I'm going to be honest, and you all guys will know this, you hacked games. This is you. This is 100%. This meme is you. Cheating was, of course, banned by most games. They don't like you cheating. But where'd you draw the line in cheating, really? Maybe we, cheesed a boss mechanic in a raid. Maybe we used an add-on that perhaps wasn't entirely, allowed. Maybe we're using macro tools and gaming mice. What about botting? There's a reason we all work in cybersecurity now and we don't work in a prison, and that's because we didn't technically commit any crimes. So if these 2 logos mean anything to you, put your hands up if you recognize these 2 websites. Okay. For you, you're going to understand this talk quite a lot. But this is how I got my start. So if you're not familiar with what Rage Zone is, it's private servers. So when you play an MMO and you're a teenager and you don't have money to pay for your World of Warcraft subscription, and your parents won't buy it for you because it's a recession and they're busy affording other things and not paying like 10 quid a month for a WoW sub, you might be tempted to check out what are called private servers. So private servers are where people run their own version of a game server. And then you can play like an MMO like WoW, like with a small server of, say, 10 people or 20 people or 30 people or 300 people. And you don't have to pay a WoW subscription for it. It's become very popular for things like old school versions of games. So old school RuneScape, before Jadex made it, was not kept up to date by RuneScape. And in fact, Jadex kind of forgot half about it. And part of the reason why they brought it back is to stop the swell of private servers. And so that's where I actually got my start in cybersecurity. I don't talk about it a lot because honestly, the 3 kind of communities I was involved with were RuneScape, Habbo Hotel, and Warcraft. And by far it's Habbo that I was the most involved with. And it's kind of embarrassing. If you've ever played Habbo Hotel, you know. And it's kind of like my embarrassing little secret. Though someone DM'd me on Twitter, I'm like, oh my god, you're famous now. And I was like, yeah, hi. And they were like, oh no, don't you remember me from your Habbo Hotel days? I'm like, oh my god, I thought I'd finally moved on from this. So this is kind of a bit my backstory, and it's 3 stories about some games that I played. And I want to start with the massacre of Falador. Put your hand up if you're familiar with this event. Put your hand up if you played RuneScape. So, this is an I was hoping the video would work. It'll be the conference Wi-Fi, won't it? Maybe if I pray next.
Andy has problems with this.
Oh well. This is a video of somebody getting absolutely slaughtered in the starting area of RuneScape. But why does that matter? So, RuneScape, if you've not played it, is an MMO. You have these skills, you get these skills up by doing the tasks. What people tend to do is they tend to get a bunch of logs, and their character will do this. If you played RuneScape, you understand exactly what I'm mining. If you don't, you're going to be very confused. And it's kind of like WoW in the sense that it's a fantasy adventure, it's a fantasy world, you can walk around, but it's an MMO, so there are other people as well. And they added this new skill called construction, which allowed players to build houses. And if you've ever played an MMO before, and you've ever gone through the suggested features, you know that player housing is one of the most top requested feature in literally every MMO. And this allowed you to do things like build little chairs, make little rugs. It also allowed you to build a combat ring for your house where you could PvP other players within the kind of safe area. So one guy called Cursed hit 99. That's the highest level construction skill. And is the first person to ever do it. So he says, guys, come back to my crib, and throws this massive party to celebrate. And people come in from the server, they log in, they start going, they crash the server. So many people show up that the crash just lags. And everyone in the house gets kicked out of the game. Now, a few players at the time were in one of these combat rings when it happened. So they had this flag that meant that they still had PvP enabled. Now, PvP in RuneScape is actually really important. So this only happens in the wilderness, or wildy for short. And when you die, you lose all of your items. You drop them, apart from your 3 most valuable items. And people do not go in PvP areas without heavy preparation. They are they put the stuff in their bank, that anything expensive is gone. And what happens is that, because they still had their can attack other players flag, anyone can kill anybody else, even outside of the wilderness. So victims in safe cities had no flags so they could even fight back. So these groups of people just go slaughtering for an entire hour before it's finally stopped by Jadex. And the kind of eventual thing was we didn't test the game enough. Whoops. And this is what happens. So on TeamSpeak, a bunch of friends who have noticed this start luring people into the starting cities. People who have lots and lots of valuable items. There, by the way, if you've never played RuneScape, you see this party hat. One of the most valuable items, by the way. In total, in 1 hour, 2.5 billion gold of items were lost. That's a lot. 2,000 people were in the server, and they are basically all in the kind of starting few zones as well. So they're also killing new players too. But there's teleportation circles, teleportation runes that can teleport you. Finally, after an hour, they get banned, permanent ban for killing players, despite the fact they weren't actually, breaking any rules. They weren't committing crime. They just had this flag, but it was the whole luring people to their death that Jadex really didn't like, and labeled them as bug abusers, right? And they just said black marks for abusing bugs. And even if they were killing, say, for example, bots and not real players, they were actually still banned, because really it was around this idea that this was an abuse of a mistake and therefore you're going to get punished for it. So that's story 1. Story 2 is about scripting. So if you've played a lot of MMOs and you're particularly involved in the private server community, you'll be familiar with the idea of scripting. Typically what we do is we log packets. We log packets to find out and reverse engineer the client and how it works. So this is a series of issues that affected Habbo Hotel back in 2001. So if you've ever played Habbo Hotel, it's got fat client, thin server. The client holds quite a lot of information. If you've never played the game, it is like, it's literally microtransactions in Facebook. That's how I describe the game. There's no game. It's like the thinnest veneer of game in there. Anyway, so they have this fat client, thin server, and the client has to hold quite a lot of information about things like the position of your character, what your character is wearing, etc., etc., etc. So the way that this typically worked is you'd run one of these scripting tools, and what it would do is it would log packets that allow you to send your own packets. So you could send essentially like malformed packets and get kind of interesting things to happen. Like you'd wear a bunch of like combinations of clothing that wouldn't be possible. You'd be able to make multiple versions of you in a room. You'd be able to change things like the wallpaper of a room, which typically you have to pay for. And for the most part, Sulake, the company that made Habbo Hotel, really didn't care about it that much until people broke the encryption. So people ended up breaking the encryption. So not only were they able to read the packets, they were then able to send their own packets to the server and have the server respond appropriately. No longer was it the case that this was only affecting the clients. This then started to affect the server. So things like being able to spawn fake furniture, unreleased furniture. There was an ability to hand out credits, which they're not like credits like we do it. People were paying for these on their mobile phones. It was like £2.50 for 250 credits. And a lot of the kind of like thing here ended up being these 4 things that you would basically get pretty much instant banned for doing. And in one case, somebody actually got arrested. So, being able to tag Fernie is short for furniture, by the way. So you could go into the client, put in a new furniture ID, and it would render anything you wanted. So you wouldn't necessarily need to own the room. But again, people didn't expect people to actually be touching that because you were under the impression that this client is controlling everything. We had lingo injection. This is on Shockwave. Shockwave ran lingo. So you could inject your own code. So then now you've got an arbitrary code execution. And the client just accepted it and ran it on your machine. Very common if anyone has ever followed like the Flash game era. That's fundamentally like kind of what killed Flash, was just the sheer number of vulnerabilities in Flash. Then there are things like error photos. You could do that would crash people's clients and cause DOS. But the kind of one that ended up kind of going a bit crazy was the encryption. So the encryption on Habbo Hotel was cracked multiple times in different versions. They often went in to try and adjust how the encryption was handled in order to essentially like stop people from being able to make what are called retros or like private servers for Habbo Hotel. So in the background, there's a bunch of people who now have very serious software jobs. So I'm actually not going to name any of them, because they have actual careers now. But they got their start, breaking the encryption. And what happened? Well, they started out by just banning people. They then expanded in 2007. A guy called Giax cracked one of the encryptions, and then essentially errored everybody out. So he kicked everyone out of the server. Police showed up and seized his computer. He has never been back. He had some community service as well and a fine. And this happened again at the Flash era. It freaked somebody out so much they broke half the encryption. They hadn't even released it publicly. Again, the Metropolitan Police showed up, seized their computer. They've never been seen again. Presumably now, like, warded off of a life of crime, hopefully. But people genuinely got arrested for this. It ended up going from, oh, you can just change the client and it's just on your side and you're just gonna, trick people, to you touch the server, the police are showing up at your door. Is it technically hacking though? Because these packets were packets the client was sending anyway. There is nothing in here that involved modifying the server code. There was nothing in there that involved modifying anything the client wouldn't already be sending. But the way they handled errors meant that you got things like crashes from kind of benign stuff because it happened in the wrong order. So did they technically commit a crime? The Metropolitan Police think so. Otherwise, they wouldn't have shown up and taken their computers, though I will admit the majority of people who were building these servers were under the age of 18. So you're looking at children who, quite frankly, they're not going to fight with a solicitor against saying, well, technically it's not a computer crime because it's your own packets. They don't have the kind of money to do that. And what this ended up kind of eventually enabling was this whole, like, actually quite vibrant developer community. I know, again, I said a lot of folks who I used to know back when I did this, I was 13. When I was between the ages of like 13 and 15, where a lot of people actually got their start in computer science from doing things like this. Look about WoW. I played WoW a really long time. I probably shouldn't have been playing WoW at the age I was playing WoW. I played it as soon as it came out in the UK. So if you've ever been in a dungeon with somebody and you've been like, oh my god, why is this person an idiot? It was me. I was an actual child playing WoW. Yeah, sorry, I didn't know how to CC that, so I hope you don't mind. I didn't interrupt it either. Was that important? Was I supposed to do something? And there's this thing called auto-clicking and multi-boxing. Yeah, no video either. So what you can do in WoW, and for the longest time, some automation in WoW was allowed. It had this, like, really thin kind of grey zone between what was allowed and what wasn't allowed. So in this screenshot here, somebody is doing something called multi-boxing. So this big one here, this is one of their WoW instances. They've also got these 4 running in the background. And what they've essentially done is they've got, you see how they've got 5 little bears here? That's because each one of those is each one of these bears here. So they're essentially controlling 5 characters at once. You get, there's a /follow command where you can follow another player. You do that, you get all of your characters to follow each other, and then you can do things that typically would require, say, a group of 5 friends, but if you're lonely and you don't have 5 friends, then you've got another option here. You can be your own 5 friends. And WoW had this kind of thing to say. They would call most of this automation activity botting. So botting involves the automation of any action, not just movement. If a program is pressing keys for you, you've violated the terms of use. So their kind of stance on this was an auto-clicker that automatically clicks on resources for you to farm them as soon as they appear on your screen is automation, full stop. But multi-boxing, technically, didn't involve clicking anything automatically. And for the longest time, multi-boxing was actually completely fine by Blizzard. Blizzard was quite happy for you to pay for 5 different WoW subscriptions until recently. Now, when people started, gaming mice became really popular and macro tools became really popular, there was a lot more kind of, I'm going to call them normies, who were doing, were experimenting with this automation. So if you're using something like, at this point, like Razer Synapse, if you're using a peripheral that can click super quick and that can do like a double, triple, quadruple click, they got treated a bit more leniently than some of the botting botters. In 2015, they were looking at 100,000 accounts banned. Most of them, though, were not necessarily banned forever. It was only a 6-month ban, a few days ban. They kind of did say, well, okay, you're not allowed to use these, but we know you didn't really realize it, so we're going to be a bit more leniently. However, input broadcasting, which is mirroring the keystrokes across multiple instances of WoW, the multi-boxing, was actually just fine until 2021. That's when that finally got banned, because their point was, okay, if you're using like a tool that just mirrors your inputs across different windows, you're still pressing a button to have something happen. So that's not technically automation, so that's fine. And then in 2021, after the fact that, it's a bit silly, you go, okay, well, it's not a clicker, so it's okay. But then something interesting happened, because WoW also banned a lot of add-ons. So if you've never played WoW, you will not be that familiar with this, but WoW, like a lot of like older games, allows you to modify it in certain ways. Now, in 2025, WoW says we are no longer allowing you to have add-ons. Instead, you'll have to use, in this case, they just turned off the add-on API and then made a new add-on API, which has less stuff. Because you could use add-ons like weak auras to give you some automation, to flash up when something was ready for you to use, to detect whether or not you had a specific condition put on you. People used weak auras for all kinds of things. They're essentially like little scripts that you can run. Now, this initially Blizzard had been fine with for many, many years. In 2025, they actually said, look, we're banning this. And the reason why they banned it was nothing to do with people hacking. It was actually to do with, if you've ever heard of the World First race. So in WoW, when a new dungeon gets released, there is often a race to see who will finish it first at the highest difficulty. And what was happening is teams that had money could have custom add-ons made for them. They'd have like development teams who would make them add-ons that would make the encounter easier for them, but harder for, filthy casuals, where you don't have an entire development team you can use. But they use the kind of veneer around this as banning saying, okay, we're just making encounters that don't need these add-ons. But I think for me, the three stories from my kind of past kind of goes into kind of this one lesson, if you like. None of these actually required anyone to hack into a server and get access to the source code or modify it in some way, shape, or form. In one, it was a bug that was then abused. In Habbo, it was the way the client and server interacted with each other and the fact that, certain error conditions were not checked for gracefully. And in Warcraft, it's often around how this behavior is detected. But again, none of these required anything more than creative use of game mechanics. And really, isn't that why we all work in security now? Because we're all people who do creative use, but not of game mechanics, but of hacking tools. We've got the same instincts, we've got higher stakes, but we also have better snacks, because we're not in prison. Thank you very much.
Do we have any questions for Katie?
Does anyone have any stories as well from their creative use of game mechanics? Like, I'm not admitting to a crime on stage. You've just done that. It's a horrible idea.
Hypothetically, has anyone ever heard of perhaps
a person who is not me?
Has anyone had a friend that did it?
I did a talk at B-Side Brum a month or two ago about using a scripting API in a game called Armor Free to get remote code execution.
Oh, nice. By the way, the Game Hacking Village at DEF CON still has their CFP open until tomorrow. So if you do have any fun stories.
Okay, so crappiest hack that I worked out, which definitely did not put me under the CMA, is, do you remember Candy Crush Saga back in the old days?
Oh, yeah.
If you changed the date and the time on it, you could get free lives.
That's
so basically, if you go into Candy Crush Saga and it times you out on your lives, and you go into settings on your phone
and just change it,
scroll it forward 3 hours, you get all your lives back.
But my kids have done that. Did that with what was the Switch game with the wee village and the wee foxes and all the people.
Animal Crossing.
Animal Crossing
actually has a character called Rossetti
the difference
who detects
is when you're a child and you do that, it has absolutely no repercussions on your phone. When you're an adult, and I definitely wasn't an adult when you do that, it fucks all of your reminders, it fucks your calendar, it fucks absolutely everything. You're just sitting there, you're like, do I want the 5 lives? And I'm never going to ever get this reminder for the fact that if I don't take my medication, I may die.
Tempting stuff.
I don't know. Which one do I want?
You used to be able to do that with Duolingo as well.
Oh, did
you? With the hearts that regenerate slowly over time.
Oh, God, Duolingo. That is a game. It really is. No, it really is. No one ever actually learned to speak a language or Duolingo.
No.
You can game it so quickly.
Right. No more questions? No more admissions? Nobody feeling guilty, want to get something off their chest?
Are you offended? Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. Daddy's not here, he's downstairs.
Also, I should say, if you are local, you should totally check out 2600 North. Saskia is at the front in a yellow t-shirt, and she will happily convince you. And also, if you are a woman, non-binary, identify as such, you are more than welcome to come to Cyber Nanas, where I admit to crimes. Because I know no one's a fed.
Nanas. Next Nanas is Tuesday. It's Manchester. Vapiano, Call Exchange.
I'll be there.
5.
You should definitely come.
If you want to join, come find out Emil Katie. We'll add you to the Discord because we need to book a table because we're naughty and that's a great thing. But you're really, really welcome. So anybody who identifies as a woman is incredibly welcome at Nanas, and we're definitely not trying to bring down the patriarchy. So motivation.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.